And welcome back to Patriarchy Principles, the podcast where we explore the intersection of faith, family, and leadership in today's wild, crazy, complex, and honestly divided world. The show is about helping fathers and leaders navigate not only their personal responsibilities, but the broader societal challenges that shape our lives and communities. So, made with fathers in mind, but it's really for anyone who wants to learn a little bit of something about a little bit of something different, taking some of those dinner table conversations that we're not quote unquote supposed to have, and well, we're having them. So I'm your host Jay, and today we're diving into the state of American democracy and the barriers that prevent meaningful consensus in our government. Because let's be honest, our government is so divided, the two parties are so misaligned that they can't even agree over basic issues and things that should be common sense. Joining me today is Michael Anderson, a historian, political analyst, and the author of 4 insightful books on political morality and the state of American politics. Current book, America's Counterfeit Democracy, Rule of the Power Elite, explores how wealthy families and major corporations have partnered to control American government, impacting everything from legislation to media narratives. Which, the more you know about this, the more you get into it, and the more you understand it, the more you see how it all connects. Today we'll discuss the roots of American tribalism, the influence of elites, and what this means for the future of democracy. So, you're going to want to grab a notebook. Make sure you grab a seat, grab a cold drink, and Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, really happy to have you. So, man, we have plenty to unpack, plenty of places we could start, right? So let's start here. And I'll give an example of my view personally. So my view personally, and people know this very well on Patriarchy Principles, I'm a conservative. I'll say that. I'll say who I voted for, things like that. You can probably guess who I voted for. I'm a conservative. I'm 30. I voted for the same person the last 3 elections. There's only one option there. So take that for what you will and how you will. That was my vote. Everyone votes differently. I'm okay with however anyone votes. But there's some pretty big barriers, at least to me, in our American government, right? So the current example that I can think of, and this one just happened at the time of this recording. By the time this comes out, it may be a little bit down the line after it's already enacted and things like that and signed into law. But the Lincoln-Riley Act. I'm sure you're familiar. Are you familiar with the Lincoln-Riley Act?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my issue isn't with the act itself. I think it's a good act. I think it was a good idea. I'm glad it passed. My issue was with the 145 or 156 Democratic legislatures that voted against it. My issue, personally. And I think it's a great example that highlights the divide in the government, right? Because there's two sides, there are two sides of the aisle. But for something like this, that should be a moral issue, there's still people voting against it. From your perspective, why is that?
Well, if you look at and Jay, I want to pause for a second here because I've got an echo somehow. When I speak, then I hear myself. So I don't know. I don't think it's my headphones. I could take the headphones out, but there it's better.
Okay. Sometimes it just has to cycle through and catch up.
Okay. Well, if you look at the Democratic makeup of the House, and I was surprised at this myself, I found this out while I was writing my 5th book. The conventional wisdom to me is that Joe Biden lied to the American people about what his intended agenda was, because he pretended to be his 40-year good old Joe senator who was a moderate. Because if you look at his votes in the Senate, very close to the middle, just a little bit to the left of the middle.
Yeah, so that's why Obama picked him, right? Because he was seen. That's why Obama had picked him originally, because he was seen as very moderate to his agenda, that someone that the people would see to keep him like center aligned, help him stay more center.
Yep. So he lied and got votes. I wrote an article the other day and I said that he wouldn't have been elected if he would have told the truth, because in America, people don't vote very far from the center. First of all, the independents live there. And second of all, there's a lot of people around the center on both sides. So you're not going to, if you go radical, you're not going to get elected. So there was that big lie there. And so I assumed it was all. The truth is that he was negotiating with the progressives the whole time he was running. He just didn't mention that to the American people or put it in his campaign. So I wondered about the source of that. How did he do a devil's bargain with progressives? You helped me get elected and I'll, implement your plan. I wasn't sure about it, but in researching that and looking at the constituency or the factions of the Democratic Party in the House, which is where I started a couple of minutes ago, I assumed there were probably 10 progressives or 10 or 20, whatever, and the rest were, more conservative Democrats, not radical progressives, just run of the mill Democrats, welfare state people, whatever. Turns out there's 80 progressive House members in the House Progressive Caucus. So the progressive movement has made tremendous inroads in the House. And so it is a large faction. And because the progressives are more boisterous and aggressive than other Democrats, they're really controlling the House. So the answer to your question is funny. I read an article this morning and they said it was Ann Coulter's article, and she said that if Trump proposed fixing potholes, a great number of Democrats would vote against it in Congress, which is your point. So
Exactly.
there are some, particularly the whole progressive group and others, who will vote against Trump no matter what he proposes. And that's partly a commentary on the tribalism we're experiencing, because the sides are so separated that there isn't any middle ground to work. I mean, I think we're lucky that the bill passed. I'm just happy to get enough Democrats to avoid a filibuster. So I'm not really worried about that I just want to get enough votes supporting the Republicans that it passes.
Yeah. No, and the thing with this bill too was introduced by Fetterman, who's a Democrat. I think he's a Democrat in name only these days. I think some of those Democrats that are there are Democrats in name only. They're dinos. We have rhinos and we also have dinos now.
Yeah.
But I see that there's to me, there's three tribes in this, right? There's the far left, the extremism, the progressive, things like that. The AOCs and
Yep.
that one senator that pretends he's a lady. And then you have the center people, right? You have the people that are truly in or around the middle, right? They're center left, they're center of right, and they're center. You have that group, and then of course you have these far right extremists, the extreme MAGA people that take every word to heart, that are Trump's my king, Trump's my Jesus kind of thing. You have those people, right? So you have those three tribes, and I think those are the three tribes in the actual government, and then you actually have those across the political landscape as well, like just as people. But how did we become so tribal in all of these politics and whatnot? Because to me, and I'm 30, right? I'm 30. At the time of this recording, I'm actually 29, and I voted for Trump the last 3 times. So I was raised in California. I was raised on the left coast. So I was raised in Washington, in California, in Hawaii, back to California. Someone like me, who's raised in those environments, probably is very unlikely to be voting conservative since they were 18 years old. Very, very unusual for myself, at least. I have very few peers that vote the same, that are from the same area, but that isn't there. But the tribe should be, and I think this is where the people in the middle have middle ground, should be America first. Like the Lincoln Riley Act should pass without any votes opposing, 300 whatever to 0, because it protects Americans first. It protects women, girls, children first. It protects American citizens first. Everything that's about American citizens should pass with flying. There should be no debate about it. There should be no filibusters on those things, right?
Well, except there's a lot of people on the left who hate America, and who hate America or hate capitalism or embrace globalism, all of which are against what Trump stands for.
But yeah, so then why would you go and work for the American government if you hate America and you hate capitalism and you're a globalist? Like, why would this route in this job be for you? Because that's not the type of person who should be in this. Should be someone who's about America first.
Because you're participating in the transition to the globalist state. It's the deep state in Washington. So the people that were hired to work in the federal government during the Biden administration probably goes all the way back to Obama, are bought into the narrative that capitalism is bad and neoliberalism is the answer. So this is the huge project that Trump has started. I mean, he's trying to reestablish nationalism, which he gets criticized from the left for being. To them, nationalism is fascism, which it isn't. It has nothing to do with
No,
it.
not at all.
Nationalism is respect for the individual country in opposition to the globalist idea of making nation states disappear. That's what the globalists want. So he's opposed to that. He's trying to reestablish American traditions, blah, blah, blah. He's trying to reverse a lot of what the left did. So that's his role. But there's a couple of things that you said that are very important that I react to. One is the difference between the two sides is biological. I mean, my first three books were about the biological differences between the right and left. It's genetic. 50% of the probability of you picking one party or another is genetics from your parents. There's I wrote an article recently. There was a poll that Pew did that said 81% of Republican parents have a Republican child and 87% of Democratic parents have a Democratic child. So you are your parents' genes, not where you were living.
That makes sense. But my dad was never, I guess my dad was never really into politics. Like, we never talked about it really.
Right.
Like, it was never a thing. So I never understood it until I got to college and things like that. And then when I finally could vote, I was just kind of looking through it. It's like, well, what are my values and kind of how was I raised, and what makes more sense to me? Does it make more sense for me to register as a Republican or a Democrat? And I'm like, well, I'm Christian and I have good values, and I think I mean, I'm 18, I'm very naive, right? And I'm like, but I think I align more this way. So I check the box and then I vote Republican all the way down ballot. My first time.
Right. So the good news about the biological thing is if you're a conservative, your kids are not going to be turned into liberals by their university, because conservative kids go to the university, listen to all that stuff, and then go their merry way when they graduate. They go back to being conservatives.
Yeah.
There's the biological basis for the right and left philosophy and ideology. The second thing I will say is that when people ask me, if they do, what is the role of the right? What is the role of conservatism? The role of conservatism is to keep the brakes on the left, because the left always trying to do things that are either illogical, immoral from the right standpoint, or dangerous. Look at the open border thing. I mean, we could spend hours on that. Why?
Hours.
It's very difficult for conservatives to understand why anyone would want open borders. Because first of all, they're potentially people escape into the country and there are criminals, number one. Number two, they can take jobs away from Americans who have either been naturalized, they were once immigrants, but they followed the rules and became citizens, and they could lose their job to somebody who works for less. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
And some people say, well, they're hoping to expand the Democrat constituency, getting more votes. But the interesting thing about that is the Democrats are becoming more wealthy, highly educated, and the Republicans are becoming more middle class. So you're actually potentially adding more Republicans by having open borders. But I mean, in my mind, not one more person should be admitted to the country than we have the staff and organizational capability to handle them. The idea of all the millions of people escaping, I mean, is insane. Insane.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you here. And I think the average person with enough common sense, you can say hi to my cat's on the screen. See her little ears there, but sorry, I digress.
It's okay. I've got a cat too.
I think all men, as they get to a certain age, they need to have a cat because they just make your life better. right? Cats are great. Dogs are great too. I have dogs and I have a cat, and I just love this freaking cat. Uh, I don't know why, but anyways, I think the average person with enough common sense can look at the border situation or look at the left's agenda really and be like, what, why? I can't agree with that. So look at all the people who left. Tulsi left, RFK left, Elon left, Zuck's left. Like all these big influential they had so much potential. They could have had a democratic legacy for generations, right? Between Tulsi, RFK, and Elon was part of them. Zuckerberg was part of them. Bezos was part of them, right? And now all these the richest and most influential people in the world, let alone the nation, are now on the other side, supporting the other side because they're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't with you guys, no more. And I think the average person, as we saw in the last election, the average person was like, yeah, I can't do this either. Like, I can't with you guys no more. Like, we're done. Because I think the average person can see the things that are going on that is like, I don't want men and girls sports. I don't want an open border. I don't want criminals and rapists and people stealing American jobs in the country anymore. I don't want this. I never signed up for this. This was never part of what I voted for when I voted for it, kind of thing. And it goes back to, like you said, the agenda was lied to. And I think we're seeing that made very clear, even just, we're what, fourth day coming up today that we're in onto the new regime, Trump 2.0. And he's made it very clear that my agenda that I ran on is my agenda in office. Just stacks of executive orders, signing everything he can, rescinding old orders, putting new orders in, you know, stirring the pot a lot, a lot of pot stirring.
All the
But
DEI people got fired yesterday
yeah, they're
in the
gone. All the
government.
departments shut down. Government officials going back to office with the goal of some of these major departments, like the Department of Education. The goal for that department is to end it in the next 4 years, is to be done with it, to flatten that building, turn it into a freedom park, right? So, like, the agenda is very clear from the beginning, and he's following through, which I don't think in my lifetime I've ever seen a president like that follow through. You fully understand their executive powers, everything they can do, and do it
Well, I
without
have the answer for you to that. I could solve that mystery for you. Trump is the first populist that's ever been elected president. And
populist.
populist is an individual who takes under his wing or her wing a very large constituency, which in this case is MAGA, who had no one to represent them. Because in the early 2000s, the left moved toward Silicon Valley as their new constituency and all their billions of dollars of wealth and their neoliberalism and discarded the non union, middle class, lower middle class American. So those people are sitting there with no representation. Then Trump comes along and he is willing to represent them. That's why they're glued to him so tight. So it's really a change in the demographics of the two parties that's part of it. But a populist, if they can produce enough interest, can get elected. It's just he happens to be the first one. So, what's important to understand about that is one of his greatest adversaries is the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment, the Republican establishment, because they want to run their own party and their own ideology. And as long as he's running it, they can't do that. So they hate it. They equally hate him. I mean, Liz Cheney and the Lincoln Project and the Never Trumpers, those are all establishment people who look at Trump as a interloper and want to get him out of their lives. You know, why are there 6 indictments, 2 assassination attempts, and 2 impeachments? It's never happened before. Because everybody, both left and right establishment, hate the man because he's playing with their toys. And they want to play with the toys themselves.
Yeah. And he wants to throw those toys out,
Yeah, yeah,
essentially, right? He
yeah.
wants to destroy the toys. He wants
Right.
to destroy these machines that are essentially controlling the country, that have been controlling the country for generations now. You look back, and I think a great example of this, and please correct me if I am misled here, and re-inform me if I have any misinformation here. But the our food companies were great up until like a little after World War II, I believe. Like our food was good. Like our food was good. Like it was healthy. People weren't getting fat. It wasn't ultra processed and things like that. And then something happened to where the drug companies, like the cigarette companies, I think it was specifically, bought the food companies so that they could label things a certain way or do things a certain way. I'm trying to remember here. I have a little bit of fog, so please forgive me. But so then the cigarette companies then controlled the food companies, and then it all just kind of went downhill from there. Where drug companies now control the food companies, so now they're controlling what goes into the food and things like that. Am I like on track there for kind of how that all?
Sort of. I mean, I still think of them as separate. There's big pharma, big ag, and then who was the third? Cigarettes are gone, basically. I don't think the cigarette companies owned a
No,
significant
this is just how it
amount
started,
of
I believe.
food companies, but um, but the point of your statement is 1965 or whatever year it was when the food pyramid got published, which is probably, it's very hard to find something our government has done that's worse or more lethal than publishing the food pyramid. You know what that is, right?
Yes, yep. I think
Okay.
yeah,
And the
we learned about it
original
in
food
school.
pyramid had carbs at the bottom, and what you're supposed to eat, maximize the carbs and minimize the fat. So meat was down low, don't eat meat, just eat carbs. And that started the ball rolling for the whole, carbohydrate pandemic, which is why 50% of Americans are obese now, because it was the government supported that lifestyle and people took on that lifestyle. And of course, those foods have ingredients that are like cocaine, like the sugar and stuff that acts like dopamine. So you have a nice snack or whatever it is, you want another snack, you want another bag of potato chips, whatever it is. So
Hmm.
why did the food pyramid upside down? Because the lobbyists paid the politicians to make it so. So that's one of the worst things that's ever happened to our society in terms of health. 60% of all disease in the United States is lifestyle related. Eating, not exercising, smoking, drinking alcohol. 60%. So we're really paying for, we talk about a ridiculous health care bill. We're paying for people living poorly, not for disease. So let me make one more point, though, because we got to go back a little bit, because you're talking about understanding the left. And it's very important to understand the left. As conservatives, we don't, I mean, I'm a conservative, but I'm consider myself a moderate politically. So there are many issues that the conservatives tout that I don't agree with.
Yeah, and I
If
think
they're
that's important for most people to understand, right? Like, there's a lot of people who say they're conservatives, and there's a lot of people who say they're liberal, but some people may not understand what those two things are, and they may actually view themselves slightly more one way than the other, but on most things, they're in the middle. And I think it's important for most people to be pretty moderate on most things, unless it's like a common sense issue, like it should, something that's like America First. Like, for example, we mentioned earlier, the Lincoln Riley Act. That should absolutely be a 100% of people understanding and supportive of that,
yeah,
without a doubt, kind of thing.
right.
Issues like that there should be no moderation for that. That should 100% be all people, no matter what. That's something that should be evaluated very basically and plainly. But other issues, they shouldn't go left and right. You should be able to call out, okay, I don't agree with that on the right, I don't agree with this on the left, and be able to see both sides as wrong. Not just because you vote one way or you align one way means everything that my party does is true and correct, versus everything their party does is wrong and detrimental to society. Let's evaluate it with open eyes and some moderation there.
Well, that's another issue. There are about 20 million people that are radically left, and there are about 20 million people that are radically right. So that's 40 million people out of 330 million. And just to round it off, let's say that's 10% of the country. They're the ones controlling the narrative on the media, because everything is a left right ideological argument. Should we have open borders? Should we not have open borders? I mean, the logic there is there's some middle ground that everybody should support, that we should pursue. Instead, all we hear about is one group wants totally open and the other group wants it closed completely. So, and I understand the closed completely thing because we got a lot of work to do to fix what Biden broke. But it's important for me to talk about why the left is what they are so you understand it. Inherent in their brains, and this is something not in the Republican brain to the extreme it is in the Democrat brain, is the obsession with equality. That drives them in their life because they believe that any inequality in a society is wrong. They're overly sensitive to it, and they believe that government's role is to help end all inequality. So the difference between the two parties is the left believe that's why the left supports socialism. They have this idealistic concept that if we put a socialist government in, everybody's the same and everybody has the same opportunities and everybody earns the same money and we'll all be happy. What they don't understand is if you put that in, then you got to have a dictatorship to run it. Because who's making all the decisions to level everything out? It doesn't work. It's never worked. So Democrats believe in equality and they would like to have an egalitarian society where everybody's equal. Republicans respect and understand the fact that human beings are hierarchical. The natural process for human beings to live in a group is for people who are either smarter, stronger, or better salesmen, I'll say, rise to the top. And the other people don't rise to the top because they don't have those capabilities. And that doesn't mean they're mistreated necessarily. A lot of people, I mean, I read an article once, there's a theory that if 10 people, there's a big car accident, 10 people run to it to help out, one person will emerge as a leader, and eight people will do what that person says because he took charge, and one person won't be able to do anything because they'll be too scared to be involved. But that's just a small example of the way human behavior is divided by capability. And Republicans understand that. Republicans are individually driven and they believe that people can make their own way. You know, if you want to rise in the world, work at it and nobody can stop you. If you don't work at it, you're not going to get anywhere. So there's this equality thing, and let me explain how that stretches across the democratic landscape. Let people out of jail. Don't prosecute people for less than $900 crime. It's like the society is unfair to these disadvantaged people because they don't have some opportunities, so they commit crimes. So it's not their fault. Nothing is their fault. It's society's fault. So, put prosecutors in that are going to, get rid of bail, let everybody out, whatever. That's the George Soros model for prosecution, which is now dying because the people that he paid $300 million for, whatever, that got elected are all getting defeated because nobody wants that kind of government. So their belief is do no harm, and it applies to the immigration thing. They're sanctuary cities and I heard a podcast about this yesterday. Sanctuary cities were created in the 60s to protect conscientious objectors that didn't want to go to Vietnam. So, the original purpose made sense. But it doesn't make sense to harbor people who are criminals, for example. I mean, it's gone way beyond.
Are not equal.
Right. It's gone beyond common sense to an ideology, and that makes it wrong.
Yeah. Have you listened? I'm assuming the podcast you're referring to is Tucker Carlson's interview with Eric Adams. Yeah, that one was really good, very eye-opening, and it was really interesting to listen to that one. I listened to it as well, so I feel like we listen to a lot of the same podcasts. But it's interesting because the way that Eric Adams broke it down when he got indicted and how he got indicted, it's because he had other mayors from these sanctuary cities who were all on the way to D.C. to put a stop to it, to say, I don't want this, right? Like, we don't want this. I want this gone. I don't want this in my city anymore. And it's interesting. I think that's very reflective of if the mayor notices it, the people notice it, right? I don't think there's many people in New York. Heck, I have some friends that are in New York that I talk to. I'm not going to name names, but one of them being a Jewish woman, a conservative Jewish woman in New York City. Imagine how her life is since all this. She's very happy with the election results because she finally feels a little bit safer now. But she tells me that New York City, it's fucking Gotham. It's like Gotham City, like real life Gotham City. And then I'm originally from Seattle. I'm on the other side of Washington State now, so now I'm on the east side, which is fantastic. Like for me, because it's much more conservative, much more like clean, and not
So
as many.
you're on the part that wants to join Montana?
We're on the part that wants to join any other red state that will take us.
Yeah.
If Idaho will take us, we will go to Idaho.
Oh, Idaho, right, is in between Montana. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we will become the Washington, Idaho, Montana part of the state. We will leave the Cascades and west over to be Washington, and the Cascades and east over outside of, I want to say, Spokane County, which was like a light blue. We'll all head over to Idaho, kind of thing, and we'll be fine. We'll be happy.
Yeah.
We'll be so much happier. Washington sucks, but the west side of Washington, the Seattle side, is such shambles. Like now they're trying to pass bills. They're introducing bills on the House floor, Washington State House floor, I'm trying to remember what it is. So there's a bunch that went in before Inslee left office, and these were the three that I had the most issue with that I hear on the podcast. I believe I spoke about them. And they all kind of go hand in hand. One was a bill that allowed for a reporting line, like a snitch line, basically. That if someone offends you or someone does something that hurts your feelings or misgenders you or anything like that, you call that line. Second one was allowing schools to, if a child says that they're trans or whatnot, then if they say then they're then in danger of this, and I had it on my Twitter somewhere. I can go find it eventually and post it. But if they say they're in danger because they can't tell their parents and they're going to get hurt, that teacher or staff member is then allowed to call CPS or social services to help get them the gender affirming care that they want, without the parents' consent, without the parental knowledge or anything like that.
Ridiculous.
Which is terrible. And then the third part of this was introducing an LGBTQ history curriculum that has to go into effect by October 1st, 2025. So those were the first three issues that I had a big thing. And I talked to a gentleman, his name's Isaac Holiak. He's going to be running in 2026, so bless his heart. I hope he is just so successful with his bid for the House and whatnot. I think he's a great guy and whatnot, and I'll be supportive of that campaign 100%. The next one here are some recent bills that I'm thinking of that are just ridiculous. Pretty much enabling homeless encampments and giving rights to homeless encampments, which that doesn't help the homelessness problem. You see, the homelessness problem is you have to get them off the streets, not enable them to stay on the street. And then what this measure does is allow the homeless encampment to stay where they're at, protects the homeless encampment to then stay where they're at, and then allows the homeless encampment to take legal action against someone trying to remove them.
Yeah.
Which is
you know the LA story, right? About homelessness?
Yeah.
They spent $24 billion in the last 10 years on solving the homeless problem, and nobody knows where the money went because they haven't reduced the homelessness by one. It's actually much higher.
Yeah. Well, it's the same for San Francisco. Remember when in San Francisco they had all the world leaders come in, they had Xi Jinping and other world leaders come in, and they were able to clean up San Francisco and make it real nice for a week.
Yeah.
And then the day after they left, everyone's back out on the streets. It's like, how? Where does all this money go? And there's some other bills that are being pushed on the House floor right now. It's like these make no sense. Like, why? Why would we want this? Like, people of Washington do not want this. People in Seattle who are extreme, woke liberals want this. But majority of people in the state voted red. There's literally 4 counties that control most of the delegates. 4 or 5 counties, I want to say, in Washington State that control 4 or 5 of the delegates, or majority of the delegates there, that keep our state blue, unfortunately. Very similar to California. The delegates are all controlled by different counties, and it keeps the state blue. But and this is where people don't understand, is that, yes, there's those 4 or 5 counties that are blue, but it doesn't mean that it's all blue. because of that. I showed the map after the election to a girl I was working with. I don't work with her anymore. She has since left the company I work at, but showed her the map, and I'm like, well, it's mostly red. And there was another lady in the office at the same time. She's like, well, what does the light red mean versus the dark red, and the light blue versus dark blue? I'm like, okay, that's just like think of it like percentages. If it's light red, it's like a 51-52. If it's dark red, now you're like 60-70. And she's like, oh, okay. And then the other girl here was like, oh, well, that means it's mostly blue then. Even the light red means it's still blue. I'm like, are you dumb, stupid, or dumb? That's not what it means, kind of thing. And I was trying to say that nicely. I don't remember the point I was making there. There's these sympathizers across all states, right, that care way too much about illegals and criminals and things like that, and giving them the same equality as Americans. They're not Americans. They have a country that they belong to. They have somewhere that they're a part of. The people who worked hard to be a part of this country and to do it the right way, to become part of an American citizen the right way, those people 100% deserve to have the rights that they have because they worked for it, they earned it, they learned, they took all the tests and did all the things, right? They work here, they're productive members of society. People who are adding to the society versus just taking from it, it's ridiculous. The Adams interview was very eye-opening to me because it's like, we're just giving them vouchers. We have nowhere to place them, no jobs to give them, they're not producing anything, and they're just idle hands produce crime when
Well,
you're just don't have anything.
look at. I mean, that's such an interesting case because the minute he started acting, I mean, when he first got elected, and he made some comments about the sanctuary city problem and the immigrant problem in his city and the way it was affecting the city, then he gets indicted.
Yeah,
So I think that was another case of lawfare to me
it was
because
100%.
they had to hunt for a reason to get him because he had the wrong point of view.
Yeah, and the reason was so stupid, right? It's like you sped up for a Turkish ambassador to have a fire inspection to make sure that they were up to code and things like that. Like,
Yeah,
that's such a
yeah,
dumb reason. But
yeah.
again, like he mentioned, he said they called him and said, be a good Democrat. Be a good Democrat. And it's like, I don't want to be a good Democrat. I want to be a good New
New
York
Yorker.
mayor for
Yeah,
New
yeah,
York people that
yeah.
elected me to do a certain job. I was shocked that New York didn't flip. I really think New York and California did flip. They just California especially took so long to count, and it was called before even half the votes were counted.
Well, they still had 3 or 4 congressional seats where the Republican was way ahead, and then just kept
Yeah.
counting. Days and days went by, and all of a sudden, that person lost.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine that. And then it was the same for Washington State, right? Like I looked at it, I looked at the numbers. I'm sure you can pull them up in Google here and fact check me as you're listening, but I looked at the numbers at the time of the election, so it's probably the week after, within the week. And what I didn't understand how more people in Washington State voted for Trump than voted for the Republican governor. That's the part that I don't understand. Is they're all on the same ballot, you're filling out the whole ballot, right? I have the ballot. I filled mine out, right? And you vote up the top for the governor or the president, and then you vote governor and House seats and all the other things that are on the ballot, right? How are there more Republican votes for Donald Trump than there are the governor of the state? I don't think that many people decided to not fill out their ballots fully, but then the numbers the math doesn't math, right? There should be, the votes didn't add up to the number of votes that went for Kamala and for.
I have a thought on the answer to your question. I don't know if it's right, but to me, it's just that MAGA is stronger than other Republicans. So you might, if you're a big Trump supporter, vote for him and not vote for others. I agree. It seems illogical. I'm just searching for an answer there.
No, I hear you. I don't think there is an answer here until there's full transparency on elections, right? The only thing that would help it, that I feel that we can get to a point, and this is one of J.D. Vance's big things that he wants to do before he leaves office, and I think it's great. It's part of his personal agenda. Is voting day is a national holiday, so it's a paid day off for everybody. Everyone goes and votes. Votes are done, counted, and tallied same day, which Venezuela can do it under their, I don't know,
Dictator.
Dictator, right? China can do it under their socialist dictator, right? Cuba can do it. Laos People's Democratic of the Republic can do it. The Socialist Republic of Vietnam can do it. They all can do it. Why can't we do it? We're America. We have more technology than all of them except for China put together. We have more technology than Cuba. We have more technology than Laos. We have more technology than Vietnam. Why can't we do it? We have definitely more technology than Venezuela.
Well, there's kind of a life rule that I think about that you may have heard or not heard, or you might laugh. The Democrats always accuse the Republicans of doing what they're doing.
Oh my
So
God.
they're always claiming that Republicans are trying to make it hard to vote because you have to have an ID. Everybody has an ID for everything. So why can't you use one of your other IDs? Like you in Ohio, you use a driver's license. You have to show it and they scan it. You can't
Thank you.
vote unless you have a driver's license. So it's very, very easy. It's a scan machine when you check in.
It's
And
common
so
sense.
they say the Republicans are trying to stifle black people from voting. And it was funny because in the fall, somebody did a poll in New York and they talked to only black people. And they said, here's what the Democrats are saying. Do you agree with it? There are no places to vote in your neighborhood, right? Oh, no, I vote right down the street. You don't have any IDs, so you can't vote. What are you guys talking about? I got a driver's license. I got IDs. I don't need, it's not an issue for me.
I
So
know.
this is a mythical black character that left is created to try and use as leverage to say the Republicans are cheaters. Meanwhile, they're cheaters because in all the big city machines, Detroit, Philadelphia, California, of course, all those big cities, Minneapolis, there's a machine. And the machine has union people involved in it who go out and get votes.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because it's so right. Like I'm biracial, so I'm part African American. I get it from my dad's side. I don't have a single family member on that side of my family who doesn't have an ID. And this is in East Oakland, California. I don't know a single person growing up that's African American that did not have an ID because you have to have your ID for the liquor store, you have to have your ID for the smoke shop, you have to have your ID for to be able to go and get your bus pass and register for it, you have to go and have an ID to get your kids into school, you have to have an ID to go to the doctor to get your
Everything.
insurance card. You have to have an ID for everything. There's nothing you don't have to have an ID for. So why don't you have to have an ID to vote? Like you should have to have an ID to vote, like without a doubt. And now we know without a doubt, with all the reports that came out around the election time, that the 2020 election was more than likely stolen. There is no chance that Joe Biden sets that record number of votes more than Obama did. There's no way he gets more votes than Obama. There's no way that he gets more votes in 2020 than Trump did with a margin, winning the popular vote, winning the everything with less votes than Joe Biden did. There's something that doesn't add up. Yes, there's a lot of people who did not turn out to vote in 2024, which I think is absolutely something that has to change in 2028 when there's the next election. Is everyone seriously needs to get out and vote. I think there's a lot of conservatives who did not go on and vote for Trump because there's like, oh, well, Trump's got it kind of thing. Or there's people who just aren't registered. So I think there has to be more grassroots movements in every single county, and every single person that can be involved should get involved with their local Republican Party to lead that charge. It's very easy to get involved with your local party, Democrat or Republican. I don't care. Prefer if you go join your Republican Party, of course. That's my view.
Well, I saw the fraud happen in 20
Okay.
because I was watching, I live in Ohio, so there was a lot of stuff going on about Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And in Detroit, which is Wayne County, there was an episode where all the Republican observers were kicked out of the facility and people brought sheets of plywood in and they put them up and covered the windows of this room where the counts were taking place. Now, do you think that that's legit? And it's been a mystery to me that none of this was ever turned into anything legal. My understanding is defenders of the fact that the election was legit, even people on the right say, well, there were 78 cases of corruption filed and nothing was found. Well, and I've never really looked at this, but I think almost all of those were thrown out for you don't have any standing. So if you're a Republican observer and you're complaining about this, you don't have the right standing to make a case, to file a case. It had nothing to do with whether there was evidence or not. And I watched there was a hearing after the election in 2020, maybe a month after or something. And I don't know who whether it was probably the Michigan Assembly, which it may have been controlled by Republicans. They had witness after witness. They had 200 people in the room. People came up and said, well, I saw somebody opened a door and a cart full of new ballots came in. We don't know where this came from. Person after person, filing an affidavit and then being a witness. So they're not liars.
Right.
So now it's interesting because Hannity had Trump on last night, and I don't know if you saw it.
I have not seen that. I haven't seen that yet. I was going to watch that today.
Well, it's actually a repeat of the inaugural address, so you could skip it because he talked about all the issues that are important, but we've already heard that. Hannity said to him, and I have been thinking about this too, maybe it's better that you lost in 2020 because if you would have won,
yes,
you wouldn't have had the experience. Multiple things wouldn't have happened. First of all, MAGA wouldn't be as strong as it is now.
Yes, I could not agree more.
Also, it took you 4 years to purge out the rhinos. Actually, the rhinos are Trump people, when you think about it, because they're people, Republican in name only, meaning you call yourself a Republican, but you don't follow the establishment. So he had 4 years to build up to where, Operation Warp Speed 2, which is where we're at.
Yeah.
And then plus it allowed the Democrats to shit the bed.
Yeah.
Which they did.
Absolutely. And I think there couldn't have been better timing for it, right? Because now you get a top tier, if not number one, maybe top 3 businessman of all time going in, fully understanding the business, understanding the ins and outs and his power to take over the CEO spot and everything that he can do and control from minute zero, after he's sworn in, everything that he has power to do, everything that he can do, and fully understands it, can fully formulate a full agenda in 4 years. And I think it's great. But
the other thing Hannity talked about is the fact that, or maybe Trump said it, this is the end of the Clinton, Obama, Biden axis. It's dead. Biden is leaving office with no constituency because whatever tiny constituency he had left, he burned by doing all those pardons. Pardon his whole crook family, and it's just amazing.
It looks so bad. All those pardons he gave out pretty much enlisted that all these people are guilty of something since 2014. I'm guilty of something since 2014. He didn't pardon himself, but I would imagine that he's going to pass away within the next 4 years, so nothing will actually happen to him or to his family, unfortunately.
Sure.
Honestly, I thought he was going to pass away before the election, and then Kamala was going to get like a few days in there before the election and transition of power and whatnot, and it was just going to be something crazy that didn't happen.
But you may not know this, but basically, do you know what neoliberalism is? Neoliberal, the technical term definition of the term is it's the belief that capitalism is the most important object of a society, meaning that all the institutions in the society should use capitalist principles, not just businesses. Like universities should be neoliberal. That's why they are turning themselves into corporations, basically. So although the Republicans started neoliberalism in the 70s, it was greatly embraced by the left. Clinton was a neoliberal. Then you had Bush, who was a neocon. But then when Obama got elected, he put all the Clinton people in under him because he didn't have any foundation for his presidency. And then, of course, Hillary's a neoliberal. Then you got the Trump interlude, and then you got Biden back, who's another neoliberal. So this is this whole part of this neoliberal globalist theory where if neoliberalism should be embraced, then the whole world should be neoliberal, so it should be globalist, and we don't need countries anymore because countries are dangerous because they can pursue nationalist interest instead of global interests. So then you end up with this stuff like farmers in Netherlands can't grow crops because 1/4 of their fields can't be used because they're creating too much methane or whatever.
Yeah, which is
They're crazy. 15-minute cities. Do you know what that is? That's a concept.
yeah, that's the concept of what's going to happen to LA now that that's what's going to happen to the Pacific Palisades, that they're going to turn into a 15-minute city, and then this Project LA 2.0 or whatever the fuck Gavin Newsom's talking about over there, and now the fires are getting down to San Diego and going up towards, you know, other hills. It's just they're trying to establish this new world order of these 15-minute cities, and it if you're like yourself and I, and you can see it for clearly what it is, what they're clearly trying to do, and you can connect these very obvious dots. It's like a preschool level connect the dots drawing, right? To where you're making a star in one, two, three, four. You know what I mean? It's one of those. It's like that's what they're doing, and it's so plain and obvious, and so many people see it, but there's so many people that don't see it and they don't understand it because they're not, I guess,
Paying attention.
they're not paying attention, or
Yeah.
they're not plugged in like you and I, or they're not having conversations like this with people who maybe, like, you're much smarter and much more well versed than I am, and I'm having a conversation with you because I want to understand it more and deeper. Everyone should be trying, and I tell one of my buddies this all the time. He's 23, 24, and I'm like, dude, your next stage of evolution to becoming a man is, you know, really getting deeper into your faith and getting deeper into politics. Because I think that's like a natural progression for as men get into their late 20s, early 30s, and whatnot, to get deeper into their faith, deeper into politics, and understand these things at a deeper level, for understand how they affect you and your family, right? That's the point of this podcast, to understand how these things may affect you and your family. But I guess my last question here is, do you think with Trump's agenda, the executive orders he signed so far, and the potential that there is for these next 4 years, the momentum, the mandate from the people, the with the purpose to eliminate these ridiculous departments, government efficiency, establishing now the External Revenue Service, and the things that he's establishing and abolishing all at the same time. Do you think it's enough to eradicate enough of the deep state that it will give? This is a very complex question here that I'm trying to ask. Maybe not to you, but it feels a lot in my head. Do you think it's enough for Trump to pass the torch to a J.D. Vance or a Vivek Ramaswamy or Tulsi Gabbard for the next 8 years after that? Do you think they can do enough right now to keep it going in 4 years to get, I would imagine, J.D. Vance elected for the next 8 years after that, and then Vivek Ramaswamy for the next 8 years after that, since he's going to run a governor bid in Ohio next? Do you think they can do enough in the next 4 years to keep it going for the next total of 12 years with J.D. Vance?
I just wrote an article about this, which is on my Substack, and I'd be happy to give you a free subscription to my Substack after we're done. But
Perfect.
basically, it starts with what happens to MAGA. MAGA is the middle class, and those who follow Trump need to understand the importance of keeping MAGA. Because if MAGA is unhappy at the end of Trump, MAGA dies with Trump's career. So, and Trump is very assuredly connected to JD because, first of all, he's brilliant. He can out debate anybody, and he came from nothing. And
His story is amazing. I love JD Vance. I'm such a fan of JD Vance. The story, the family, the look, everything, the pedigree.
So Trump's got 4 years to pass MAGA on to JD, and then that's going to be a good starting point for JD to be elected. But the Republicans, the point of my article is Republicans have to start paying more attention to the middle class because it's becoming a more important part of their constituency. They're not just billionaire industrialists like it was in the 50s. It's the middle class. And so they have to be more responsive. They also have to not fight with each other. You know how Nancy Pelosi ran the House. Anybody who goes off the straight line gets pulled back. I'm going to primary you if you don't vote for this. Well, Republicans don't have anybody like that. They don't behave that way. They're individualists. So you get people like the Freedom Caucus fighting over budget because they're all libertarians and they don't want anything to pass if it spends money. And in the end, they defeat themselves. So they have to learn how to willpower, and they have to protect MAGA. Those are the keys to your question, the answer to your question.
Okay. Yeah, no, I see that because the middle class, that was a big part, right? The middle class felt left behind. You saw it all over X. You saw it all over, different social media platforms. It's ironic, and I've seen it firsthand. So when I started this podcast, and I'll just end here, because I'm really happy that freedom of speech has made a comeback. Like true freedom of speech, is there going to be bad speech and hate speech and good speech and all the in betweens? Yes, but this this podcast, Patriarchy Principles, I had created a Instagram page for Patriarchy Principles. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. First time, I had barely started it, posted some images, just, the logo, things like that. Just kind of build some hype, introduce it, things like that, right? New Instagram page, new podcast. Really excited about it. Deplatformed within a day or two. I challenge it, overruled, get the page back. Do it a second time, go through it, challenge it, get it back. We made a mistake, we're so sorry, kind of things like that. Third time, account's gone. Just gone. Couldn't log into it, couldn't see the logo, couldn't save the stuff off of it, nothing. It was gone, completely gone.
Now, when was the third time?
This is all in October. This is all around October to November. This all happened in the matter of a month.
So it's during Zuckerberg's resurrection then, which is
Yes.
surprising.
Yep, in October 2024. So it was deplatformed multiple times, which I'm like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, I know it's not an issue. And then I also have a couple friends. They host the Great Girth podcast. They're on like their 15th Instagram page. They're on like their 15th like TikTok page, right? And it's just ridiculous. But now that Zuck's become one of the good guys, guess what page is restored? Guess what page I can see a little logo on again in my accounts that I've created? Patriarchy Principles one. So I can attest that Zuckerberg's not bullshitting, that they're loosening up a little bit. They're bringing back these things. The videos that I would post for Patriarchy Principles used to just absolutely tank. They would not do well at all. Now, they actually get some momentum. They actually get some traction. Now, I can see the visibility of the whole podcast page starting to get more visibility. So I'm just really pleased, and I'm really happy for how it's going. I'm really happy that free speech is making a comeback.
Let me ask you a question
Go ahead.
based on what you just said. I don't know much about TikTok. Is it heavily censored?
Yeah, I think it's heavily liberal. Let me say it that way. I think it's heavily liberal, and so the liberals don't like something, they report it. They get it taken down. They work to get it canceled. They work to get it removed. They work tirelessly to find these things, to call you out, tell you you're wrong, tell you you're a fascist, a socialist, a Nazi, all these things, right?
So there's liberals running it, even though ByteDance owns it. They let the liberals here run it.
More or less, that's
Okay.
what it is.
Okay.
It's also not what it was when it started. It's now more QVC-like. Every other video is an ad for something, some product, things like that to try to sell and whatnot. And it's just not. It's not entertaining. There's very few like entertaining people on there that are actually worth watching.
Did you hear what Trump wants to do with it?
He wants to divest. He wants ByteDance. So he gave a 75-day extension, and he wants ByteDance to divest a 50% interest to an American owner. No, I'm almost done. Gotta get ready for school. Anyways, that's my cue.
Well, okay.
But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the other day he said he wants to hold an auction and auction it off, and half the money goes to the buyer and the other half goes to the country.
That's very true. I hadn't heard that. I knew that he had signed an executive order to extend it 75 days, and he wanted half of the interest to be divested to an American owner, like a U.S.-based owner. So I guess Mr. Beast is in talks here. Kevin O'Leary offered $20 billion cash for it, straight up.
Elon might buy it.
Elon might buy it. I actually had posted that on my X account and tagged him. So that was before he was rumored. That I would love if Elon bought it, was able to get those algorithms, mix X and Twitter together and create like a TikTok X kind of thing. I think would be really cool. But then to re-algorithm, kind of like China has it, to promote education, to promote learning, to promote politics, to promote health, promote wellness, very similar to China's TikTok. That's what theirs does. So that's what I wanted to see, which I thought would be really, really cool. So I would think if Elon was able to get it, I think that would be great. But again, he is still paying off the Twitter debt, which I think will pay for itself here within the next couple years if it hasn't already. That $44 billion, because he's starting to have the ad dollar thing coming back now. But we'll see what happens. There's 75 days for a deal to get done. I'm confident the deal will get done. I'm confident that Ukraine's going to end. I'm confident that the conflict in the Middle East will continue to end. I'm confident that we'll get a richer economy through tariffs. I would imagine our relationships with Mexico and Canada will improve. I'm confident that our world relations on the world stage will improve, and that we'll start to climb that ladder back up from being where we were at the top. Now we're towards the middle and bottom in most areas, and we'll get back towards the middle and top half in most areas going forward. So I'm very confident. I'm very optimistic.
Yep, that's good.
So I think it's possible. I definitely think it's possible if they're able to just accomplish everything they can do. If they are able to flip more of those seats for the second half of the term in 2026, because now they have people. They have said, we will oppose you. There will be someone to run against you. That Trump said he will personally endorse. That Vance will personally endorse to run against you, to flip these seats if you oppose the agenda, kind of thing. So they're aggressive. They're out there. But I got to get kids up for school.
Yep.
So I'm going to wrap this thing up for us.
Okay.
It's the last question, very last question here. If you could witness one historical moment firsthand, what would it be and why? So any historical moment that you would want to witness firsthand.
End of the Civil War.
Very cool. I think mine would be Martin Luther King's speech. I would love to have been in that crowd, feel that energy, and just been a part of it. I think that would be so cool.
Unfortunately, he's been betrayed by his party.
Absolutely. And I think also Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in baseball would be really cool.
Yeah.
I'm a big baseball nerd, so that would be like mine too. But anyways, Michael, thank you for joining me today. It has been really, really, really fun. I love having conversations like this. I love learning more and learning deeper from someone with as much knowledge as you. And we barely scratched the surface on most of these things. So it's very exciting to have you. I really appreciate you shedding light on the state of American democracy, your insights into the historical roots of tribalism, and the influence of elites provide an invaluable perspective for anyone seeking to understand our current political challenges. To our listeners, if you want to explore Michael's writings further and learn more about his upcoming book, his current book, America's Counterfeit Democracy, Rule of Power Elite, visit MikeAndersonBooks.com. That's MikeAndersonsBooks.com. It'll also be linked in the show notes. It's time to delve deeper into the forces shaping our democracy and consider how we can rebuild consensus for a better future. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Remember, strong leadership begins with understanding the systems we operate within and the systems as well. Until next time, lead with integrity, stay informed, and keep building a legacy of faith and purpose.